Welcome to Inside Analog Photography. I'm your host, Scott Shepard, and the Inside Analog Photography radio program is brought to you by Fujifilm, making life more colorful. You know, they have great instant film, they have pack film, but you know, they have a brand new Instax. This is a small format. It's the size of a business card, i.e. credit card. This is really, really cool stuff. The Instax Mini is in the country. Definitely check them out. www.fujifilmusa.com. Great black and white, color, chrome, neg, you name it. And of course, this Instax stuff rocks. Really cool stuff. FujifilmUSA.com/professional. Our friends over at Richard Photolab at richardphotolab.com, the place to send all your film for a great workflow. These guys will develop your film, black and white or color. They will scan it. They'll send you back prints. They'll send you back proofs. They'll send you back whatever you want. Check them out, richardphotolab.com. Our buddy David Wood at DR5. This is the black and white process where you send them your black and white neg and you get back chrome. This is unbelievable. You wait till you see what comes back from DR5. Pretty cool stuff. Check them out, www.dr5.com. Upstrap Al. Upstrap, the coolest camera strap that will not let the camera slide off your shoulder, over at www.upstrap-pro.com. Our media partners of the Analog Photography User Group, the place on the web for all things analog photography, of course, over at www.apug.org, and our photographic philanthropy partners, George Eastman House International Museum of Photography and Film. This is the place where they archive all great photography, traditional processes, film, wet plate, dry plate, you name it, going back 100 and something plus years. You guys should really look at a membership. It's very economical, great benefits from it, and it helps keep the past of photography alive. This is great stuff. Check them out over at www.eastmanhouse.org. We got a great show today. We have with us Elizabeth Fisher. Elizabeth is a great photographer from the East, and we're going to talk to her about her work with black and white, what she's up to. A lot of people have seen and heard from her work over at the Analog Photography User Group, and it's a lot of great stuff. Elizabeth, how you doing today?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Great. Thanks for joining us here on Inside Analog Photo. Great to feature you here this week just to chat with yourself and all your beautiful photography.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoy it.
No, it's great. So, Elizabeth, tell me, how did you get involved in photography? When did you get the bug?
Well, I always followed my dad around when he was taking pictures, and I always loved when he would get a box of slides back. We'd get to show them to the family, and he'd always let me bring something out from the closet, usually from when he was in Alaska. Those were always my favorites to pull out. So I guess just from early on, I always associated photography with good memories. And my parents gave me a little Kodak Instamatic when I was about 5. I don't think that really left my side until I borrowed my dad's 35 millimeter when I was in about 4th grade. And I still have it.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. In fact, some of the shots on my website are with my dad's Pentax.
Now, this is the H1A?
Yeah, it's the H1A. The old screw mount, no meter, and he used to shoot slide film with it with a separate handheld meter, and I really don't remember any of his shots not coming out.
Wow.
So I guess I had a high standard to live up to right from the start.
So how did your photography progress from there? Did you take it in school at all? Tell me how that's worked out from when you were the kid shooting with that stuff and then moving forward.
I did have the advantage of having photography in high school. We actually had a darkroom. So I learned at least sort of the basics of printing. I don't think I learned very good lab practices back then, but I did at least know how to get some sort of image onto the paper. When I went off to college, I majored in biology, but it was at a liberal arts school. So we had to take art classes and music and philosophy and all sorts of other things. So I used photography to satisfy my art requirement and learned probably more about just photography in general than actually printing, because the instructor wasn't really a technician so much as basically a shooter. And then it just basically stuck with me all the way through. Every once in a while, I sort of left it behind for other things, and then I've always come back to it.
So have you traditionally been shooting and selling prints the whole way through, just using photography more as a hobby, or how have you progressed through life here with your photography? Has it been something that you've been doing for a living, or how's that worked out?
I've never really been doing it for a living. I've occasionally made a little bit of side money with it. In high school, I used to take pictures of the guys on the basketball team for the girls who liked them. That got me enough to pay for the film, basically. I think all the way through, I've occasionally sold a few things here and there. but it's never really been something I had the time to really devote to it, to try to make money at it. Recently, I moved, so I had to leave my old job. So all I really have time for now is photography. So I'm trying to work harder at both getting better and hopefully making a little bit of money with it.
Sure, definitely. So what do you like to shoot? What's your most favorite thing to shoot? I know you have some beautiful photography on your website, black and white and color. You have some great flowers, and we'll get into some hand-colored things here in a bit. But tell me what you really like to shoot.
I think mostly I like shooting landscapes. Obviously not the most lucrative of the areas of photography, but I'm lucky enough to live not too far from a great state park here in Pennsylvania called Ohiopyle. And there's just a ton of trails, and even if I don't get any shots, at least I'm outside and getting at least a little bit of exercise, especially hauling 25 pounds of camera gear around. It's usually at least a good day, even if I don't have great shots to show for it. In the winter, I like to do still lifes and attempt to work on controlling lighting, because outside there isn't really as much to do.
No, you're frozen, so you need to work indoors. Yeah. So there you go.
And this winter was really bad. We never had like a nice pretty snowstorm. It was all just kind of gray and muddy, and it wasn't pretty.
So with your photography now, are you developing your own neg? Are you printing your own stuff? What's your workflow now?
Well, at least with black and white, I develop my own negatives and I do my own printing. I've pretty much done my own printing for the last probably 10 years or so. I had my own darkroom when I was living in Massachusetts, and that was one of the conditions when I moved down here, was that I had to be able to set up a darkroom. So I got that going a little quicker than I got any of my other stuff organized. Developing negatives is not my favorite thing to do, especially since here we have well water. So I do have to do a little bit of tweaking and buying distilled water and things like that. But I'd rather develop it myself than send it out still.
Sure, you have more control, so this is always favorable if you can do it. But like you said, it is sort of a hassle.
Yeah, that seems to be where I'm most likely to screw something up.
I guess when you're printing, the negative's already pretty safe.
Yeah.
At least the capture's there, and then if you blow a print, well, then you can do another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about what gear are you shooting with mostly now? What do you like out of the array of cameras you have? What do you like the best?
I think a lot of the times my favorite is probably my Pentax 645N. It gives me a decent-sized negative to work with, but it's still really comfortable to carry around and to hold. Works really well on a tripod, and it's very easy to use. I like the results that I get from the 4x5, but I'm still pretty new at large formats, so I have to think a lot harder still when I'm doing that. But I'm trying to use that one more.
Traditionally, of course, you shoot a lot of black and white and you're developing your own stuff. Do you like it better than color, or do you like certain things for the black and white and certain things for the color? What's your thought? Because you have some colored stuff up here on your site, so you like shooting color neg. Why do you like it or difference over black and white?
I guess sometimes I'm just in the mood to shoot color. In the spring, especially when everything's blooming and it's finally not gray and gloomy, it's just nice to get out with a little bit of color film. I tend to shoot print more than slide, mostly because that's what I used to do. Until probably 5 years ago, I hadn't really shot much transparency film at all. And I still haven't shot any in medium format, although I do have a pile of it in the freezer right now.
Any Kodachrome?
No, it's all Fuji.
Well, there you go. So you don't have to worry about Kodachrome. So
right. I have a hunch, although I haven't asked him, that that's probably what my dad shot most of the time. But I don't know that I've ever actually shot a roll of Kodachrome, unfortunately.
Well, Fuji has beautiful stock, so you can't go wrong with shooting Fujichrome either. So, and what do you typically like? Let's talk about that. What do you like for your film, your emulsion? Let's talk about your black and white. What are you shooting when you're out shooting black and white?
Recently, I've come on to Fuji Acros 100, and I have a bunch of that, and that tends to be what I've been grabbing lately. I've never really settled on one that I loved. All of my growing up years, I shot Tri-X because that's what there was, basically. It was easy, and it works well. But now that I'm doing a little bit slower photography, I'm finding that I like the 100-speed emulsions a little bit better, especially trying to blow them up a little bit bigger in the darkroom. I'm hoping to be able to add 16 by 20 pretty soon, so it'll be really nice to have some nice non-grainy film for. I have gotten some good results with Tri-X. Actually, one of the flower shots on my website, the vertical shot of 3 calla lilies, is shot with the old Pentax on Tri-X. And that one you really can't tell unless you look closely that it's Tri-X. It would be better if it were with a slightly slower film, I think.
And what do you like to shoot when you're shooting color?
It depends. I think I have a fair amount of the Kodak Portra, and I've gotten some pretty good results with that. I've never really settled on one that I definitely like above the rest. In 35 millimeter, usually whatever I can find, and that tends to be kind of skimpy if I'm looking at regular stores lately.
Yeah, I think it's a problem anymore to walk into a retail location and try to pick out different emulsions unless you can find a good store that likes to do film, even more so of a lab. And even labs you go into anymore, that's like they got a couple different kinds, that's all.
Yeah, well, and out here in the sort of sticks, there isn't really as much. When I was in Massachusetts, there are a couple of great places up there that I really liked, both for buying stuff and for processing. But just moving down here, I've had to become a little bit more self-reliant with that. I tend to order things, which means I have to think ahead, which is not one of my best suits.
Tell me about some really cool photos of some abandoned places, especially the bank vault. Really neat stuff. Where'd you find these at?
The bank vaults I found because when I was living in Massachusetts, I hung around some with the New England crew from APUG. And for a while, there was a group, the Valley Photographic Center in Springfield, had, like, all of their area was in this old bank in Springfield. And they had access to the old vault downstairs, which is where all those safety deposit boxes are. And they've since moved to a different location down the street. And I think that the vault is actually walled off now. I think they've blocked the stairway that went down to it, but I'm not sure.
Wow, too bad. Pretty cool stuff.
It's a cool place, yeah. Hardly any light either, but with a tripod, that's no big deal.
No. So with the abandoned stuff, did that come about that it was like, okay, well, I have access to this bank and then I'm going to start looking for other broken down, creepy places? Or is it just something that you had an interest in?
I think it kind of grew over time because I kept finding places that were abandoned and realizing that they looked really cool. When I started looking at all of them together, especially the ones that are on the site, I realized that most of those places I can't even get to anymore, or they've been torn down. Like the photos of the stone steps with the leaves all over them.
Yeah.
And the two on each side of that are the porch. I took that in October, I think of 2005, and the following January, that house was torn down. And something else has actually been built on that spot. And there's a barn that's on there somewhere that within months after taking that shot, that had been torn down, and there's a colonial style in place of it. Retail and wholesale that's on there, I think that's actually been torn down now. That's another one that's in Little Falls, New York. I like the texture of a lot of the abandoned things because they've been sitting there exposed to the elements for so long. And they just get this sort of gritty feel to them that seems to come across well in black and white.
No, they're great. Have you ever wanted to dig deeper into abandoned stuff and go inside of buildings and dig a little deeper? Yeah.
I just don't want to do it by myself. I've walked around an old mill in Lowell a little bit, but the next time we went back, the hole in the fence was closed up. There's a few places that I have managed to get to, but I haven't really had a chance to explore, especially around Pittsburgh. And I'm sure that there are places around here that would just be great, this old abandoned buildings. But I haven't really found anybody else who wants to do that. And I don't really want to go by myself.
No, it's dangerous. You don't want to go do abandoned stuff without having a couple people with you just in case. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Knowing me, I would just trip over something and break my ankle.
So tell me about your hand-colored photographs. Really beautiful work.
Thank you.
What got you wanting to hand color or selectively add color to your black and white?
There was a photo lab that I used to use that I only stopped using them when the guy retired and sold the shop. But one of the people that worked there showed me a few things that they had done, hand-colored, and I thought it was really cool. And they told me where they'd gotten everything, and so I found some. And actually, the leaf shot that's on my website is one of the first ones that I ever did. And I just thought it was cool to be able to take a black and white and add the colors that I wanted to something, instead of being stuck with the colors that were originally part of the scene.
Did you find the process of hand coloring this stuff with the Marshall's oils difficult?
Not really. I kind of see it like coloring in a coloring book because I can't really draw that well. So this lets me do a little bit of, not quite painting, but sort of, but not having to actually draw the outline to start with. So it actually looks like something when I'm done. But it took a little bit of practice as to not use too much oil, because it's easy to add more, but almost impossible to take away if you've added too much.
So this is something you would do with Q-tips, cotton balls, and just a very light amount and sort of spread stuff out and work it.
Right. There's actually makeup applicators that are a little bit narrower than Q-tips, and some of those work really well for the small areas.
Oh, so one of these Marshall oil kits that you've seen in the stores, I guess they go a long way when it comes to coloring these photographs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I haven't finished a tube of any color yet, and I probably never will. I mean, I would consider them almost a lifetime supply unless you're doing a ton of coloring.
Right. This is really pretty stuff, though. I mean, it's definitely another way to increase your artistic vision. Like you said, you can make things whatever you want.
Right. I have to try some landscapes and coloring some infrared stuff, but I haven't come up with any that I really want to do yet.
So you still have a good supply of some infrared?
I have, I think, about 4 rolls of HIE left in the fridge, and I'm probably going to have to use it all this summer, because I think most of it expired actually in April. But I've found that I can usually squeak by at least by a few months.
Sure, and then I guess Rolly and a few other people have some infrared, but I still don't think it's as intense as the Kodak.
Now, from what I've seen, nothing quite gets as much of an effect as the HIE. I do have some SFX from Ilford.
Yeah.
And it's good film to work with, but it's not quite as intense.
So tell me, what do you look forward to shooting moving forward here with your photography? What are you looking to do that you haven't actually had a chance to do, and to expand your photographic outlook and what you're up to?
I'd actually like to try shooting portraits. It's something I've never really done because I've always been more of a loner anyway. And I'm usually just happy with my rocks and trees and streams and things like that. But I would like to try doing portraits and work more on studio lighting and being able to create a feel with the lighting. I'm hoping that that'll help me understand light a little better as well.
Yeah, definitely true. I mean, you start doing this stuff in the studio and then you can set up some lights, even hot light. There are multiple ways to do it. You can definitely start figuring out how all this stuff works. And photographing people is another interesting thing to do, too.
Right. I think part of what's been holding me back is I can't find people that I know who are willing to sit in front of a camera.
They're all scared?
An awful lot like me. I'd much rather be behind the camera than in front of it. And those seem to be the people that I know as well.
Yeah, we can always put an ad on Craigslist for free headshots for people's resumes, and you're trying to help the community out. So Elizabeth Fisher Photography is doing free headshots. Then you can get people that will just line up probably out the door that want to get a nice new photograph for their resume.
Yeah, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, you never know. A whole nother dimension in lighting and doing stuff with people. So always fun things. And this is great photography on your website and very pretty stuff. And also the stuff from the UK that we hadn't chatted about. But there's just a lot of neat photography that you're up to. And it's just really cool to see that you're still shooting film. You're analog based. You love black and white and you're developing your own film. This is great work.
Thank you very much.
So, Elizabeth, tell us where we can actually look at your website, go look at your work. Are you blogging? Is most of your stuff up on APUG when you're communicating back and forth? How's that working out?
I do have some things in my gallery at APUG, and I'm winger at APUG. Some of what's there is also what's on my website, which is ewfisher.com. I have a blog, but I think I've only made about 4 entries, so I really need to try to do more with that, but I just haven't yet. Part of my problem is it takes me so long to get around to actually scanning anything and to get it into the computer and editing it so that it actually looks like the print and then doing something with it. So part of it's this procrastination, but part of it is I like having a print, and just scanning it doesn't really ever seem to do them justice, really.
No, it's really hard to replicate silver on paper and the metallic look.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, you can scan this stuff and you can show it to people, but it's not the same.
Right, yeah. I recently went to Photostock up in Michigan, Bill Schwab Adventures up there, and it was just great having a portfolio sharing afternoon. And we were all looking at the prints, like some of them we'd seen on APUG, but to actually see the prints in person was great, because you just have a better feel for it when you see it up close.
So true. And this is, like I said, beautiful work, and I do appreciate it, Elizabeth, to spend some time with us and chat about your photography, and it's great to be able to show it off here. And your involvement with APUG and all this great stuff you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Well, there you go. Elizabeth Fisher. Great stuff going on with Elizabeth. Beautiful work. Really cool stuff. Definitely check out her website and her gallery over at apug.org. And of course, I've been your host, Scott Shepard, here on Inside Analog Photo, brought to you by Fujifilm USA over at www.fujifilmusa.com. Our friends at Richard Photolab at richardphotolab.com. DR5, the place for black and white chrome, the coolest process you've ever seen over at www.dr5.com. Upstrap at upstrap-pro.com. Our media partners are the Analog Photography User Group over at www.apug.org. And our photographic philanthropy partners, George Eastman House International Museum of Photography and Film over at www.eastmanhouse.org. We'll be back next week with more great analog photography.